Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. My name is Matt Osborn. I'm a town planner for the town of Hartford. I've worked on bike ped projects for quite a few times, and we're now working on the update of the 2009 bike ped master plan, which I was involved with. And if folks know Chuck Worcester, Chuck Worcester was on the steering committee that we had on that. So, and 15 years ago, I had brown hair, and I'm not saying that the bike ped master plan was a reason for my graying, but being a planner, that comes with the territory. So we're very fortunate. We weren't thinking we were going to be starting the update quite so soon, but the Two Rivers Ottauquechee Regional Commission, they found some transportation planning funds, and then gave us a call and said, hey, what do you think about maybe starting work on the update? And we were like, okay, that sounds great. So this is a listening session, so we have limited information to present to you, but main purpose of this meeting is to hear what you think. I'm an active bicyclist and pedestrian. I spend a lot of time on my bike in Hartford. I bike commute, and I've been bike commuting for a long time. And I've actually figured out not too long ago that I've ridden my bike to the Hartford Town Hall over 2,000 times. And then I spend, like today, because I had this night meeting, I wasn't able to bike commute. I did bring my bike in my car, and I went for a ride at lunch. Oftentimes I go for a walk at lunch. So I understand, I feel what it's like to be a bicyclist and a pedestrian in the town of Hartford. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Rita Seto. Rita's the one in charge of this update for Two Rivers, and Rita's a transportation planner. She's been working with Two Rivers Ottauquechee Regional Commission for over 14 years? Yeah.
18 now.
18? Okay. All right. Well, the years do go by fast.
Thanks, Matt. Again, Rita Seto with the Two Rivers Ottauquechee Regional Planning Commission. Like Matt said, we have some transportation planning funds. We thought would be kind of timely to do some outreach to Hartford and kind of do sort of a joint partnership, or at least start with some data collection and kind of kick things off for the next bike ped update. So I also have some staff here. Sarah, do you want to say anything as well? All right. So Sarah is also in our office. She's also going to say a few words about another grant that we have to kind of offer and help kind of piggyback on this effort. So.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. We're very fortunate to have some money from the Vermont Department of Health, and they are making monies available in recognition of the fact that there are certain groups of folks in the state who the data show disproportionately are harmed by health inequities and are underrepresented in planning processes. And so they have asked us to help make available stipends for those who identify with those underrepresented groups, and to make those stipends available for participating in meetings such as this one and for taking the survey. So for those who identify as refugees, English language learners, LGBTQIA+, BIPOC, unhoused, persons with disabilities, and low-income folks, we are able to provide $50 per engagement effort that you participate in. That could be a meeting, and then also the survey, as we mentioned, and there's going to be more meetings coming along. So if you're interested, there are little quarter sheets at the sign-in table with my contact information on it, and you can come, you can reach out to me, we can talk about it more. There's a couple forms that we need you to complete if you'd like to get a stipend for participating this evening. I also have paper copies of the forms with me, so if you want to sit down after the meeting and we can go through the forms together so it's all done and dusted before you leave, happy to do that as well. Thank you all so much.
Great, thank you. So yeah, like Matt said, we're kind of in the very beginnings of this master plan update. We're kind of calling this first section phase 1, which is kind of data collection, looking at the previous master plan, what was done, and then kind of go from there. So do you want to go to the next slide? So you can kind of see this is the agenda that we're going to have for our meeting. We're doing a bit of introduction, background. We're going to look at some upcoming town and state projects. Yes?
Could you check to see if the PA system's working? It doesn't sound like the microphone's working.
So the PA system, actually the mic here is actually geared towards the video for recording purposes. I apologize. I will try to speak up a bit more. So, but also not try to overwhelm the mic for the recording too. So yeah, we're going to kind of review the master plan update from 2009, looking at the priority projects that was identified then, and then what has been accomplished. We're going to kind of review some of the town and state projects that we know are on the horizon perhaps, and how that would impact the master plan effort. And then, we're going to look at the existing network conditions, and then we're going to talk about the public engagement, the survey that we have out, and then we want to hear from you what your experiences are, and then sort of next steps. So, Matt, I don't know if you want to talk about this.
Yeah. So back in 2008, 2009, we put together a list of recommended improvements. So there are 3 tiers here. 1 through 10 is tier 1, then 11 through 20 are tier 2, and then 21 to 31 are tier 3. So these were the prioritized projects, and several of them have been completed. One of the things that VTrans requires is a bike ped scoping study prior to actually applying for grants to design and do final construction. So we've done a lot of bike ped scoping studies. I have several that are here. In recent years, we did one in West Hartford. We had a pretty extensive bike ped scoping study in Ottauquechee that included about 7 different roads. We had a scoping study for Christian Street and Bugbee Street. And we're hoping that to do more scoping studies, because they are required to get the final design and construction grants. So we have received quite a few of federal grants working through VTrans. And Two Rivers Ottauquechee Regional Commission has always been very helpful and supportive, and has been quick to help us put together those grant applications. Some bigger projects that have occurred, not too long ago is the sidewalk on Lower Sykes connecting South Main Street up the hill. And then a couple of years ago, they put in a sidewalk from Lily Pond Road all the way to the new roundabout. So these projects, particularly grant projects, there are a lot of federal requirements, and there's a long process. And you get federal monies, and typically there have been 80 or 90%, therefore requiring the town only come up with 10 or 20%. But in the long run, the projects tend to cost more than if a project didn't have federal funds, because there are so many federal requirements. So there's a balancing act. The town has to fund, for bike ped improvements. And we've relied on the larger grants in the past 20 years, and it's been somewhat limiting as to how many projects we can actually do. So, going forward, we're reviewing this list, and revisiting it, and some of the projects that we've gone through bike ped scoping studies, there was a lot of public support, and it's easy to move forward to the next phase when you do have public support. But when projects don't have public support, then they kind of sit, and they don't move anywhere unless there's some public support generated and to come back to the town. So, a recommendation is if there's a project that you would like to see the town proceed with, it's important for you to contact the town and for you to contact other people in the community and to see if you can gain that support. Moving forward, we're plugging away. We have planned for the next year, 2025. There'll be a sidewalk constructed on Route 5 between Ballarvale Drive and Arboretum Lane, which is where the main entrance to the Upper Valley Aquatic Center. So that's been a project we've been plugging away with. We were originally going to do construction this year, but with the Route 5 repaving project, we worked closely with VTrans and then determined that we really should hold off on that until they're finished with their portion of the project. So.
So Matt did sort of begin talking about some of the upcoming projects and how that's going to impact the town's sort of future planning of existing and also, other projects that are going to be sort of like in the hopper, right, in the planning process. So just kind of some of the overview projects. We know the bridge out here, actually, which is the big one. Bridge 73 that connects, that's on Route 5. VTrans has begun sort of the design planning process to do either a repair or replacement for that bridge. I think VTrans will reach out to the town and the community in the next year to have a public information meeting, gather your input about, the bridge itself, what are the needs of the new bridge, improving bike ped access on that bridge to connect to other network places. You got the Route 5 paving that's coming up, and that was probably a result of a corridor study that VTrans did back in 2020. They kind of looked at from Arboretum Lane all the way up to Highland Avenue and kind of had a pretty good in-depth discussion between the town and the community about just all the different little intersections along Route 5 from Arboretum all the way up to Highland, which then, also spurred this piece here. The Route 4 and Route 5 intersection was actually, I feel like the town may have requested a road safety audit at one time. And so what that meant was the town requesting a road safety audit to me, and then I bring it up to VTrans, their highway safety division, which then brings all the engineering safety experts together. We go out in the field, kind of look at the intersection, what's the sight distance, look at the traffic pattern, and then they came up with their own study and report from that. And then one of the recommendations was, doing a roundabout to improve the intersection. And I believe that process is also underway. I believe VTrans has done a few community meetings about the design and things like that. So that's also coming down the pipe. So of all these different things that are kind of happening together in town will definitely improve the existing network in town. Matt, next one. So this phase 1 section, we're actually going to look at the existing network. We're actually going to do an updated sidewalk and bicycle facility inventory. As you can kind of see from our 2009 list, there's been a lot of new sidewalks and infrastructure added, so we want to make sure the inventory kind of captures all that new infrastructure that's been created. We also look at bike route inventories, if there's any bike lanes, bike routes that are kind of designated in town, we want to document that. Matt, do you know of, does the town actually have designated bike routes in town? Or not really official?
Not official, but it's something to look at.
Right. So we'll take a look at that. Crosswalks are a pretty important part of the sidewalk network, but it's kind of its own little entity because crosswalks do, from the design perspective, they have their own guidance from VTrans, but also highway safety of, where and when can you put a crosswalk in. You can't quite just throw crosswalks everywhere. So there's some guidance there on where you can put crosswalks. We will inventory existing crosswalks and, does it meet current standards? And then the other thing was looking at traffic volume. We will not be collecting traffic volume for all the roads in town because there are a lot. But I think one of the purpose of focusing on certain roads is more geared towards, identifying possible, in conjunction with where folks may ride their bikes, and then kind of correspond that to traffic volumes and, how do those two things kind of interact with each other. Next one, Matt. Anybody familiar with the survey? Who's taken the survey here? Awesome. That's great. If you have not, we have paper copies as well as flyer with the QR code if you want to do it digitally. I think Matt has noted that the survey will be closing pretty much tomorrow, but if, we have time. So, but the town does expect to close the survey tomorrow. But the survey's been open for at least a month, and we've got to date about 156 survey takers, which is not bad for a survey. So, next one. So, we've done a lot of talking. Wanted to kind of start gearing up and kind of listen to what your thoughts are. We've got on the map here and here, the orange is sort of the existing sidewalks that we have. And then the purple is obviously the one that is currently in design and about to go to, on its way to being constructed. So, we're here because we want to kind of listen to what your thoughts are, what is your experience related to sidewalks, crosswalks, what is existing, what is not existing, what should be there. Are there missing sidewalk links that you feel that, we know people walk from here to here, but there's no sidewalk currently. This should be a new section that the town should kind of prioritize and focus, or at least, identified in the plan so that the steering committee can then kind of prioritize later. I'd like to kind of open it up to all of you. You're confused? What would you like to get clarification on?
It seems like an auto access. Excuse me. I thought it was coming to something to talk about bicycle paths or walking paths and that. This is...
where, with the sidewalks, where do you walk now?
Where do I walk in Hartford? Yep. Well, I don't walk around Hartford other than when I'm doing errands, but... So
when you do walk in Hartford, do you feel like the sidewalks where you walk, are they?
Well, I didn't mean to,
No, not
somebody
at
else
all.
probably has, but I'm interested in bike routes, not for myself, but for my younger family. And I guess I just... and I'm
bike routes, where in town do you think folks, where does your family like to bike? Where would they like to bike to and from?
I'm sorry, I seem to have lost my voice.
It's okay. Would you like? Yeah. I'm sorry for
I have an idea for that. It's something that I've been dreaming about for a long time. I live behind the train station in White River Junction. And if there were a pedestrian and bicycle overpass over the railroad tracks there, there's several, just a pedestrian and bicycle overpass to people to safely get. There's now a little trail behind my house that people can walk or bicycle on. And there's a park, Ratcliffe Park. And so I just think that we're missing, that we could do a lot more if we could make it safe to get over the railroad tracks. And you'd have a bird's eye view of White River Junction. Anyway, it could be cool.
Thank you.
Well, I think years go by, but we had talked once about a walking path, excuse me, that follows the river. And I don't know. You're just making this sound like this is reconstructing the downtown with crosswalks and roundabouts. How do you walk around a roundabout? I love roundabouts. I hate streetlights, traffic lights. But that to me isn't a walking path.
That's a good question. A roundabout being safe for a bicycle is...
And why are you walking and why are you taking a bike? I walk and I used to take my bike for exercise and not necessarily for my transportation. My transportation now, at my age, is a little different. We're not this meeting isn't here to address that.
No, it is. We want to know how everybody is walking in town, whether it's for errands, is it for recreation, where are you walking from, where are you walking to, what are those conditions that you are walking or biking? Are they sufficient? Are they kind of dangerous and a trip hazard? Do they need improvements? And so those are kind of the things that we want to hear.
Well, and there was a talk a while back about connecting the Ottauquechee. I live in Ottauquechee, not Ottauquechee Lakes, but the village of Ottauquechee. There was talk about going through Hurricane Hill, and I don't know what's happened to that. Where was it going, Chuck? We chatted about that years ago.
Yeah, it's still a possibility. We just haven't done it.
Hiking. I guess I'm thinking hiking trails, not walking in a city.
Gotcha.
Well, I know that Hartford's not a city yet.
Okay.
It's almost there.
Connecting, I think that's a theme of
The connections.
and that gets me excited for sure. I use the rail trail in Lebanon a lot.
Yep.
I live right on Summer Street in Hartford, and it would get me really excited to have some sort of connection, just like you mentioned, to get across the river. That would be monumental. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there's a two-rail trestle across the river there, right, kind of behind, and with one track on it. One set of tracks. And there are other places in the country where they have shared trestles like that with bike paths when in a situation just like this. And really, to be able to work with the railroads a little bit would be a huge advantage. It is a real obstacle to bike paths around here. Otherwise, you could stay at the river level and just do all kinds of things.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Ann Johnson. I had emailed Matt, I guess 8 months ago or something, asking about bike paths and walking paths. And Lily and I are here. We both live on Christian Street, which we once kind of got the lay of the land. We've been, ever since I bought my house in 2020, they moved in 2017. And then it's sort of looking like, why can't we walk on this lovely road? We're in the country, and it's like the busiest road. And then we see on the plan that it's number one priority, and we feel that very much so. We have three kindergartners live right next to each other on Christian Street, and we are so close. Like, I can spit to Dothan Brook School, and yet it is not okay to walk on it. Holding my kid's hand, it's like taking my life into my hands.
Yeah.
So we're so if the whole part about this, and we were so excited to see the scoping study and all the work that was done on it.
And with the project of the school project going in across the street from our
Yeah.
house, we feel like the best linkage, because to have foot traffic coming from the school to the other school parcel where they're going to build out is
Yeah.
going to be really necessary, so that we don't have to account for a giant parking lot in that school parcel. If you could park at the giant parking lot that exists at Dothan and walk up, just with that build out too, I feel like a sidewalk is even more of a
Yeah.
priority for us.
And so I think there'd be more school support of it too. I mean, I know that it was a hard project because there was all this work done on it, and then it was lack of public support. I just did a quick little rundown of the 25 homes all along Christian Street, which all are beautiful properties and right up to the road. But a third of those have turned over in ownership since the in the last 10. Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to railroad anybody. We all want to get along as neighbors. But I think that there might be some hope that we can revive it.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any additional comments about the Christian Street?
No. So I did speak with you, and it kind of fell back because it didn't have the community support. Right. But again, it didn't at that time, but it could change in the future. And if it does change in the future, then that's something that maybe could get back on the table and it advanced. One of the things, the cost of infrastructure has really gone up, particularly since 2020. After COVID, prices have gone up considerably. And, one of the things with the sidewalk on Christian Street, looking at it between Bugbee Street and Route 5, even back, 10 years ago, the cost was like $1 million. So it is kind of daunting to think about that. But when we did go through the scoping study, there was a lot of mixed opinion about. People thought that was a rural section of road, and if you put a sidewalk in, that would really ruin it. So there really wasn't much interest or support for a path off of the Christian Street alignment. I mean, that could be something that could be looked into if there was property owner support to allow that.
And that just brings, I was questioning about money too, with the different, funds over the last few years. I mean, is there new funding sources for these sorts of projects?
Well, the town is putting money into sidewalk projects through the capital improvements program. So, we did have a recession, and that really did take its toll on, sidewalk funding. So things are coming around. There is more of a commitment from the town to budget funds every year into sidewalk projects. So that's positive. And we have, in the past, we've applied for grants, and we're going to continue to apply for grants. So that's where this update and a new project list is important.
I'd also like to respond to that too. We're hearing a lot about infrastructure bill and lots more federal money coming down the pipe, which is great. And that was, 2020, 2021, 2022. But we were all very excited about it. Yeah. But now we're like, great. we're going to have lots of money coming down. We can do a lot more projects. But now we're seeing that construction costs are going up, eating up that gap of, things are costing more, things are taking a lot longer to do. So whatever funding that is coming down that we anticipate to do more with is getting eaten up because of that construction costs. So, ultimately it's almost like the same as before in a way, but it's a lot more money.
I wonder if I've given this a lot of thought. I'm also a parent of young kids. In lieu of the $1 million to spend on building sidewalks, is there a way to slow traffic down and sort of make it a more shared road with signage and painted on the roadways? And that's obviously a cheaper option. I also want to kind of piggyback on that and talk about towns like Norwich and Woodstock that have these 25-mile-per-hour stretches that are really long. And that means that they take the towns, as a parent of young kids, it feels like they take the town more seriously than, I don't want to say than Hartford, but you know what I'm saying. If you're slowing traffic down, then that means you're respecting homeowners and elderly people and people with young kids and everyone in between. And I feel like that is lacking in Hartford big time.
I think also too with sort of the notorious towns that have those speed limits, I think coupled with that is you see the enforcement right there, kind of.
But Hartford cops are, I drive around a lot.
They're everywhere.
And there are measures. I just wonder if we can think a little bit more outside of the box, because I agree I was going to talk about Christian Street on the other side, where I live, from Harry Gibbs north, and there are families that live just past where the sidewalk ends, the new sidewalk there. And they're just completely cut off. They either have to kind of, to get to the library or the post office. I see them coming down, and people fly down that hill. So I just wonder about other measures.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm with you 100%. Wouldn't that be so nice?
Just some observations about effective design and implementation. I really, first of all, appreciate the forum and the opportunity. And Matt, so good to know that you're an avid cyclist, so you probably share my feeling that as an experienced cyclist, one of the greatest fears I have is granite curbs. Because if there is not an adequate shoulder, the granite curb is the hardest for me to escape and I ride with a mirror, I ride with a radar, so I am alerted how many cars are coming up behind me, and so that granite curb is a very concerning aspect. So I would jump on the comment about traffic calming, that when we add infrastructure, we are adding then infrastructure that must be maintained 15 and 20 years from now as cracks, and we know our seasonal frost. So I would say that things that calm traffic along with wider noted corridors can make a massive difference. And probably a resource you're very familiar with in your world is strong towns. Certainly they have a lot of documentation in strong towns of better roadways and the visual aspects of slowing traffic down, as opposed to, we'll make the road wider and add lanes. You have now made a corridor for speed.
What did you say, What were the towns that you said?
It's strongtowns.org.
Okay.
Strong Towns.
Take time to go see strongtowns.org. A lot of documentation about how do we find this balance of infrastructure and safety for pedestrians and cyclists.
I swore I wasn't going to open my mouth to say anything. But there's this thing I'm thinking about, which is not a terribly expensive way to improve walking in particular. I can't stand bicycling, but that's just my thing. Walking, however, in my neighborhood, which is around Chandler, Ravenswood, up there above Wilder, there are a lot of places where there's trees and bushes that obscure the view. So it would be really terrific if somebody could just cut back some foliage so that the cars who come screaming around the curves wouldn't be so scary.
Specifically at the base of Ravenswood.
Well, but there's a number of places. We have cousins who live a 5-minute walk, and we're scared actually to walk it at certain times of day.
Okay.
So it would be really nice if the existing roads could be kind of adjusted a little bit. Mm-hmm. I don't mean huge $1 million projects, but cutting some trees and maybe
improving the site distance and
managing a little of the poison ivy that threatens our lives. So that's my words.
Thank you. Anyone? Chuck?
I'll talk a little bit about Route 5, which it's an amazing road in that it's straight, like it connects towns, it goes where you want to go. But it's a U.S. highway, so it's complicated to do projects there. People drive quickly. And it almost feels to me like, Hartford, we end up being like we're the dam in the river. Like if you go north on Route 5 or south on Route 5, you see bicyclists all over the place. But you can't really, like imagine Matt, riding from Norwich into Hartford to have lunch or something, or vice versa, going out to the south. And it almost feels to me some of these projects are of a bigger scale that I think that we need to think about them in a bigger way that maybe leads to some sort of like a federal earmark or something. Like the idea of trying to get across the river on the trestle is a great one. That's like a big many stakeholder project. But I'll put in a particular plug for Route 5 South. So since we completed the original study, we've built the Maxfield Sports Complex, which is a fantastic spot, and you've got to drive to get there. Route 5 South is really rough on a bike. A lot of people drive to Maxfield to walk on the lovely trail, right? And so having some way to continue that connection, and it might be along Route 5, or it might actually be an off-road, from the Aquatic Center kind of going back and coming into the back of Maxfield, would be a fantastic way to sort of link that into town. We have these beautiful, the Nighthawks play a bunch of nights, and everyone's got to drive. You have to drive, to get there. So I'll put in a plug for Route 5 South in particular, but sort of that whole idea of Route 5 needing big thinking.
Thanks, Chuck. Want to say anything? Carl?
All right, so there is a big project in the works. Last year, the Vermont legislature asked VTrans to do a study of a bike corridor along Route 5 from Massachusetts to Canada. And of the, 21 towns, I think, that responded, and out of 30, and 3 of the 4 RPCs, regional planning commissions that responded, all of them said that bicycling along Route 5 was terrible. and something needs to be done about it. However, during this legislative session, the House Transportation Committee did not appropriate any money to take another step, such as organizing a steering committee for Route 5. So if you would like to see Route 5 improved, then this year, next year is an excellent time to be talking to people that might have something to do with it, people, town staff, or other planners that could just build up some support for working on Route 5.
Great.
Thank you. And if I might kind of add to that, so the VTrans Route 5 corridor, actually it wasn't a study, it was more of a survey. The legislature had tasked VTrans to kind of gauge all the towns along Route 5, what their potential support would be if there was a effort in the future to kind of look at this whole stretch from the Massachusetts border to Canada. And they put out a survey to each of the towns, and the regional planning commissions, the 4 regional planning commissions, and requested a sort of like a survey response in support or not support of the effort. So Hartford actually had 2 votes, one from the select board and then one from the planning commission. So all the different towns had sort of equal input and say about whether they did support it or not. They also asked about, these things, as you know, cost money. Like, what it, is, would the town be supportive of sort of the financial support if there was effort to kind of move forward? But yeah, as Carl mentioned, the legislature has not really moved forward with that. They haven't really directed VTrans to kind of take any additional steps at this point to move forward with any scoping study or corridor study or anything like that. So it's still kind of hanging out there. So.
When you say still hanging out there, do you mean they're just admiring the problem, or is there some other step that we're waiting for?
I think right now they're just admiring the problem at this point because they haven't really they haven't passed anything in the budget that would direct VTrans to say, okay, here's some money to now work with the towns, one town, all of the towns, one region, to kind of see how this would actually look like, and so. Yes.
It's a U.S. highway.
Yes. It's a U.S. highway.
It comes down to VTrans has the jurisdiction over it because it's a U.S. highway.
Right. So, yes.
I have 2 comments. One is in my former younger days when I bicycled, there were several states, and I'm thinking of Oregon, where they, rather than having the road with whatever it is, 40 feet and a line in the middle, they moved the line over so that the bicycle walking path, you could go 2 ways in it, but it was wide rather than, I know this.
Right, yeah.
Right, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the second thing with that is, because I've lived in Ottauquechee for 60 years, you can't put sidewalks or widen the road in Ottauquechee Village. You'd be in people's kitchens, and because that's the way houses were built back, so you didn't have to shovel snow and whatever. But so it's much more difficult in villages where there's a lot of houses and not much footage in front of them. And are you okay?
A little dry myself.
Here, no, would you like a Tic Tac? Anyhow, but I love the idea of, moving the medium line so that you have more room on one side rather than, 2 feet, 3 feet or something. So if you give 6 or 7 feet to a bicycle, and bicyclists and walkers have to be, polite with each other, so if you're coming in different directions. And I don't know whether this has anything to do with what you're planning or talking about, but what are, if any, regulations with electric bikes and scooters? Sorry.
Excuse me. I don't know if...
In what way are you asking? How are you asking?
Well, if you're going to have a pedestrian path or a bicycle path, are you going to allow, let's say a bicycle path, are you going to allow electric bicycles?
Okay. So electric bicycles, for the most part, are the same rules as regular bicycles. There is one, they're divided into 3 classes, and the 2 most common classes can go everywhere that a regular bike can go, except for there is certain areas, you won't find them in our area so much as you'll find them like in the north, such as the White Mountains, where there's natural surface trails that are wilderness areas where bikes aren't allowed, period. However, the regulations, both New Hampshire and Vermont, are that the class 1 and 2 bicycles are pretty much equivalent to a regular bicycle. They're limited to 20 miles an hour, and regular bicycles can go 20, 25. So it's pretty equivalent except for going up the hill. That's where the electric bikes are faster.
Scooters as well?
Scooters are a different category. Yeah.
Anybody else? Sorry. Chico?
It's a good segue. With the e-bikes taking more hold, you're seeing people using that as their primary form of transportation more, especially in an area like this with big hills. Suddenly people can get up the hills, and you're seeing people bike in the winter, and with our winters becoming more mild, that's becoming more and more of a possibility. So yeah, I think any sort of investment we can make in bike infrastructure is good on like a larger economic scale. But I'll try and list off just a few places in town that could use some improvements. I'll try and do it from like smallest to biggest, small from pie in the sky. One is sidewalk, a little bit, even just a little bit of sidewalk on Highland Ave. There's a sharp curve, and you get, kids, lots of people like walk their dogs there, and maybe, at night people get off from their basketball practice or something, and you get some people going pretty fast around that corner, and visibility is pretty small. And in the winter, there's kind of no place to go. The snow piles up, so that's just kind of a dangerous curve. You mentioned crosswalks being a little bit tricky in some places, and I think one of the places that would be tricky because of how they're allowed, but it'd be really nice to see, is one in front of the Main Street Museum, and now there's some more businesses there. There's just a lot of traffic there, but I think there's hard things with things being private property. But if it was at all possible, that'd be great. People mentioned the trestle in downtown White River. Being able to connect to the rail trail would be so huge. I understand that's definitely a hard one. Route 5 on Taft's Flats seems prime for a protected bike lane, something that has its own little median, just because that road is so wide. And there's not like a ton on it. Everything's pretty spread out. It feels like that road could be narrowed and give some space for bikes. And then that part, I feel like, becomes more dangerous when I ride around on a bike. I kind of dread going through Wilder on the main corridor. You mentioned the granite curbs, and it's really small. Something that could be done is street cleaning there. A lot of the time silt builds up on the curb, and there's been times I've taken some spills just from hitting too much sand. And then there's been kind of rumblings of trying to work with the dam to open up the dam, which I understand we don't necessarily have an incredible amount of power over, but whatever sway we can have, it would be amazing to see the dam opened up. Especially Hanover is right now weighing the possibility of making a bike path to Boston lot from downtown, so you could kind of get a whole natural path there. And yeah, that was a bunch of them, and I think that's good enough.
Thank you for that.
Rita?
Yes.
I just wanted to comment on the opening up the Wilder Dam to pedestrian traffic. Currently, the Wilder Dam is going through relicensing, and public comments are open until May 22nd. You could go to the town website to get information on that, but this is the opportunity. That the license is, I guess, for 40 years, so we aren't going to be seeing a relicensing for a long, long time. So if you are supportive of that, that's something that the town is asking in its official letter to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for their permitting. So the more people that advocate for that and ask, so you can just write a letter to FERC on behalf of the Wilder Dam relicensing and ask for that.
Yeah, you can even, it's super easy online.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go in and you can, if you are persistent, you can find the relicensing info for Wilder Dam. And the roadway across the top is there. It used to be open. So in my comments, I was careful to say, reopen.
Reopen.
Reopen the existing thing. It's already there. It would be, as Chico said, an amazing link from Wilder over to Boston Lot. That would be tremendous. Yeah.
There was somebody here. Comment? Did you have a comment? Okay. Yes.
I would also say it seems like Advanced Transit has, expanded their routes. There's a lot more ridership. It's free. And so, like, I think about, would it be great to be able to use Advanced Transit more, and like how to see how to link up walking with Advanced Transit stops that are already there and routes that are already there. And I think that wasn't there, the last time this bike and pedestrian plan went place, and I just think that could also be part of the component of relooking at all this. Is
one of the things we've actually done is we've done sort of like a bus stop inventory for Advanced Transit. So, and then part of the survey, there's also a piece of, as you're using sidewalks to access Advanced Transit, what is your experience? Do you use a wheelchair to access Advanced Transit? Is the sidewalk space wide enough for your mobility device to get onto the bus and as well as like biking and things like that. So it's
my house is a 10-minute walk from 2 Advanced Transit stops on 2 different routes, I think, but it's not safe for me to walk from my house to that bus stop. So I don't have the option of, I could drive my car to the bus stop too, I guess. But
great. Yeah, if you fill out the survey, you can let us know that information. That would be great.
Rita, to that point, just it's worth mentioning that AARP and the Bugbee Senior Center, along with the town and Two Rivers, have been working on a little project to redo the bus stop here at Bugbee, and hoping to put it in combination with some of the Route 5 projects that are going on. So that whole intersection out here, I always lose my... There. Thank you. Is, I think, going to be potentially redone. They're still looking at it. I don't know what the timeline is, but just to your point about improving linkages between walking and transit, there are some exciting things that are happening right here in this area, and it'd be great to be able to point to this project as a model to kind of look at other places that could be done too. So just wanted to...
So I have a question also. We talk about sidewalks, walking, and biking, and maybe in the last plan it wasn't as focused, but what about bike parking in town? Is that something the town should also kind of include, or, locations of, municipal buildings that there should be increased bike parking, and how that could get integrated into the whole system? So...
absolutely.
Bike parking's easy. You just cable it to something.
But would it be, I don't know, more official if there's like formal bike racks or things like that, other than just cabling?
It would be more official, but it wouldn't be any more convenient or easy.
Downtown could use some. Downtown White River.
Downtown White River could use some.
But it gets filled up.
Right.
And it's hard with the electric bikes, like a narrow bike rack the narrow bike rack doesn't always meet the needs of the wider electric bike things. Gotcha. So,
hi.
I had a thought along the lines of bicycle parking. Has there been any investigation into bike sharing programs? And I think I filled out a different survey than this survey that had more to do with the Upper Valley recently. I don't remember what that survey was, but in there I put a suggestion to look at bike sharing that you could link like the Kilton to UVAC to maybe the Bugbee Center and other transit hubs, libraries and schools, parks and so forth.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if everybody heard that. There was, a comment about, maybe creating a bike share network in town that could link up sort of the key locations in town and kind of optimize bike parking and all that stuff together. So.
Speak to that a little bit. I know that Dartmouth is looking at it, getting a bike share on campus. But then I think a smaller scale, similar to what you're talking about, Kilton Library is about to actually on, I think May 15th or May 17th, I think they're opening up. They're going to do rentals of a couple bikes that were donated to them, e-bikes. And so it'll be a small scale bike share, but I think it's a model to look at and I think take your point that would be a great asset.
Yes.
Chuck was talking about thinking bigger on some projects, and I used to live in North Conway, and the ICE-T Intermodal Surface Transportation Act 20 years ago put in about 7 miles of bike path on an agricultural road that runs on the opposite side of the river from the Strip and goes from Conway to North Conway. And I think the town, as Matt was saying, the town paid 10% or something, and the feds paid the rest of it. Does that ICE-T program still exist, and is that something that we could have access to for the rail trestle, that kind of thing?
So I think we're on the version of MAP 21 now. The current bill is now, the acronym is now from ICE-T to MAP 21. But I know there are, like from these federal grants that are kind of coming down the pipe, there are also not just, your traditional funding for sidewalk and bike paths, but there's also, I think, trails that might be more, I don't say applicable, but yeah, that would fit that sort of infrastructure in that realm, other than your sort of the traditional funding for your basic sidewalks and, urban bike path type of stuff. I think there are some funding out there. I think, the town will have to look at what they would like to pursue for that. Yeah.
This is more of a funding question too. The Safe Routes to School, is that what? I don't know much about that funding stream too, so I was wondering about that too.
So Safe Routes to School was a federal program that had existed, I believe, in the last transportation bill. The designated funding got cut. So in prior years, Safe Routes to School was this federal funded program, 100% funded. I believe Dothan School is a registered Safe Routes to School in the program when Vermont had it. And one of the benefits or the incentives was once the school became a Safe Routes to School in the program, they were able to do sort of like a planning report that kind of looked at access from students and teachers kind of walking and biking to school. Once they had that action plan, they were able to access construction funds that would have been 100% for that. But now that funding has the program has stopped.
Just in the last year and a half, I did team up with the Dothan School, and we did get some Safe Route to School funding for rectangular rapid flashing beacons right on Christian Street where the multi-use path crosses Christian Street, and also for the Gillette Street intersection in Wilder Village. There's a crosswalk right by the former Wilder Church. That will be both of those will be constructed next year.
And those are
under the Safe Routes to School. Yeah.
However, it was kind of a unique one because it was using leftover Safe Routes to School money that VTrans had kind of built up, and so this was kind of the last hey, we've got some funding. What can we do that's kind of low key but also impactful? So we were able to kind of partner up and kind of get that. Anything else? Yes.
I would just like to go back to pointing out some things that I've been seeing. The medians on this road between here and the intersection of Route 4 by the tea house, I see so many people that bike, because bikes aren't allowed on sidewalks in Vermont. Is that true? Yeah. So I see a lot of people biking north on this road and to get to like where the Haven is set up now, and then they actually have to like cross the median to get there, and that's also crossing 4 lanes of traffic, and it's terrifying. And I myself bike up there a lot and even walk up there a lot, and like that's on my running route too, and I just like, it's a scary intersection. And then just out here in front of the co-op, that intersection, when people are coming down the bridge and turning right, even when the walk sign is on, just last night, I like almost got hit by a car that was turning, because the rule right on red is like great until there's someone actively trying to walk in the road. So.
Thank you. Anything else? Chigo? Yeah.
I also wanted to say a thank you to DPW, who I think this winter did a great job clearing off the sidewalks in the winter. And there's been some past years when it doesn't get cleared off, and it just becomes, icy trenches that people have packed down with their feet. But this winter, I felt like things got cleared off pretty quickly, and that's a big job, and that makes it so that people can walk and get to the bus and whatnot. So I think that's also important.
Thank you for that.
There's one more thing. Yes. I'm assuming that wheelchairs are part of this equation in every instance. It just seems to me that White River Junction has the VA, and that there's got to be, I'm assuming there's emphasis on getting the sidewalks done from the VA into town. Good. For wheelchairs, for everybody.
Sidewalk from the VA to
Yeah. So we have a sidewalk construction project taking place from Arboretum Lane to Ballard Vale Drive. The town did receive, several years ago, we did receive a grant for a sidewalk between Ballard Vale Drive and Sykes Mountain Avenue. However, at that time, VTrans would not allow us to put a sidewalk across the off-ramp coming off of the northbound off-ramp coming off at 91. Cars really fly down there, and they thought it would be very unsafe. So they said we would have to put a jog in the off-ramp in order to allow the sidewalk to be put in. So,
excuse me, is Ballard Vale Drive where Bob's the gas station?
So it's the off-ramp on the other side of 91 that's of major concern. So we're trying to get the state to put in that jog in the off-ramp, because that's not a town project, that's a state project. And it was put in the Route 5 corridor study, put that in as a recommendation. So we're just trying to get that to happen. So we have partial funding for that. We'd need more funding because many years have gone by, the cost of the project has gone up. So, once we can get the state to do the realignment of that off-ramp, we'd be able to proceed with getting the sidewalk through there, which has been on the books. We've tried, going back to 2004, that's been a recommendation to have sidewalks along that section of Route 5.
Could speed bumps be put there instead? I mean, the jog seems like the jog is to check speed, is that right? So could speed bumps be put in for less money than constructing an entire jog?
I don't think I've ever seen speed bumps on an interstate off-ramp.
I don't know if the VTrans maintenance plows would appreciate the speed bumps. I'm just kind of thinking about that, yeah. But
Is that the off ramp coming north?
Into White River from the ramp, yeah.
Right by the McDonald's.
They couldn't put the sidewalk on the north side of Route 5.
The issue was crossing that off ramp. And they did look at both sides, but you got off ramps. You got 2 off ramps. One off. Well, you have 2 on ramps on the other side. They did look at at putting a sidewalk on the other side, and that was ruled out for a number of reasons.
But don't they have isn't there transportation from the hospital? I don't know. I did a lot of gardening up there. We've been bumped out of there by D-Trans, but, you're laughing. It was not pleasant. Anyhow, all I'm saying is, doesn't the VA hospital have transportation? And I don't know, there's so many cars that are parked there. I'm assuming that people that come, that isn't to say wheelchairs, we shouldn't make things accessible, but that part of Route 5 is horrendous, and it truly is. and there's so much traffic, and that's why we couldn't garden there anymore. So for a person in a wheelchair to go down there to get into White River Junction, it's pretty, anyhow. It's not an easy route in a wheelchair.
So we've talked a lot about Wilder, White River Junction, Hartford Village. I know down in Ottauquechee, actually by the gorge, as many of you may know, the Gorge Bridge project is under construction. The plans are to also improve sort of the bike facilities from the parking lots to the welcome center and things like that. Are there others? We talked about the Ottauquechee scoping study. Waterman Hill? Shall I say Waterman Hill?
So in the bike ped scoping study that we did in Ottauquechee, the highest priorities that came out of that was the Ottauquechee Main Street from the Waterman Hill Road to the library. That was the number 1 section. The number 2 section was Waterman Hill sidewalk from basically right by the bridge, the covered bridge, up to Route 4. And then there are also recommendations to connect the sidewalk by Ottauquechee Gorge back to Waterman Hill, and then also to look at a sidewalk between Waterman Hill on Route 5 over to River Street, which is just past the Ottauquechee Market. So those all rank pretty high, and there was a lot of public support. So once we're finished with the Route 5 sidewalks, there'll be effort put into getting grants for those projects.
Any other comments?
Route 14 is a designated bike route, and it's a state route, right? So I know it's a state managed highway, but I just actually biked from there. I took my kids to soccer practice at Watson Park, and then came back and then came up here, and that is a terrifying road to bike on.
That was one of my comments.
It
is because people go really fast.
Yeah. So as the population increases, that's what happens?
I don't know if it's a traffic calming thing or a designated, and it may be great to do a kind of a pop-up project. I know Hanover is doing on 120. They're doing for Bike Month. They're going to do a day where they're just taking some cones and separating and adding a temporary bike lane on that. It might be a good option to just do that, just to show and see if more people would do it, because between Hartford Village and downtown White River Junction, it's a great route to be able to be more. No, it's not far at all.
If you made it wider on one side rather than on both sides, it would work better. Listen, I've done that route many times from Sharon.
And there's actually room on that. There is room on that particular stretch to do.
Yes, there aren't a lot of houses,
and-
so you're not going
yeah.
into their kitchens to put down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's all called growth. Have to figure out how to do it.
In Cambridge, Massachusetts, Storrow Drive is closed on Sundays. There's a whole section of it that's closed, and it is filled with pedestrians and bike riders and all sorts of things. And I'm wondering if there are any roads around here that could be done with as an experiment, just also to get people accustomed to the idea of and loving the idea of having roads pedestrian and bike only.
That's a great idea. I heartily second that.
But this is Cambridge, Massachusetts. A little bit bigger population.
They could do it, we could do it.
Even just repainting the white lines, or not the white lines, but the bike icons,
Yeah.
chevrons with on 14.
14?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's also on 14 Cascadnac Ave. There's a bus stop right there, and I can kind of see. I think that it marks that there's a sidewalk there, but it's not really a sidewalk. And I know that road was closed to connect to the high school, which is great. And I heard I live on Cascadnac, and neighbors have told me that it's closed because people used to fly up and down, but people really still fly up and down that hill, and there are a lot of people that live up there that walk up from the bus station, and it's terrifying.
Thank you.
I admit ignorance on Vermont laws with respect to distance for cars passing cyclists on the road. I know that New Hampshire has a law that sometimes is signed of 3 feet at 30 miles an hour, 4 feet at 40, or 50 miles an hour, give me 5 feet. It's 5 feet between the two of us. And I would just say that as advocates on this, whether that exists in Vermont or if it ever comes up, I think it is a detriment to safety, because it basically says to a driver, you can drive 30 and be between me and the water bottle away from a cyclist. So I think that the signage for giving cyclists adequate space need to be adequate in terms of what is safe space.
Thank you. Anything else? Carl?
So the Route 4 and Route 5 intersection, when it gets redone, Route 5 is going down to one lane in each direction? With a bike pit?
I believe so. I think it's one lane kind of coming in and out of the roundabout.
From here up to the top.
From here up to the top.
That's right here. This is that what you guys? Section that's right up here.
No, the one that where we go to Route 4, in front of the was it the Haven?
Yeah,
or
right
the
here. Sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, great. That's
yeah.
running around about.
Yes, and I think they're going to narrow from 2 lanes to 1. I know there were concerns about like the truck climbing lane and how that's going to happen, but there's definitely a lot of space and pavement, so I think they're trying to narrow it down, but then also make it so traffic coming out of Route 4 not having that like crazy gap chicken. I was like, I'm gonna go now in that space. So.
And then the tea house added. I mean, because I live in Hartford Village. Anyway, that's just a side note. But it has added this extra thing where you come around that corner and then people are like stopped right there, and there's not a lot of room to go around them. Anyway, so there's just a lot more. That just adds one more thing to that whole
area. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to add a comment on this section of road from Bugbee here. from the bridge that they're working on the intersection up to the top of the hill. I'll reinforce Ellen's comment that granite curbing is pretty much a trap. I've had 3 very close calls with on my bicycle, and going up the hill, there was a large 2-axle dump truck and passing me. What I didn't know was he had a trailer with an excavator on the back with the treads hanging over the edge foot. Came within this close to my handlebars, and I was trapped by the granite curb on that section. So when I heard about this this section of road going down to 1 lane with a bike lane, that is definitely an improvement. But the comment I would really like to make is between here and the top of the hill, in all the years that I've lived here, a few decades, I've never seen a business stay in business along this stretch of road. And I'm quite sure that it's got to do with the design of the road. And when you think about it, this should be a prime commercial area through here because it's the intersection of 2 major routes. So it says a lot about the design of the road that nobody is able to stay in any of the stores along here.
Thanks, Carl. Anything else? We've definitely heard a lot, which is great. I think talking about the different things, Matt's writing a ton of information, so I think this is a great start to kind of jumpstart our next sort of priority list for the town. Matt, do you want to go to the next slide? So kind of recapping sort of our next steps, we'll be going out to do some inventory work, sidewalks, crosswalks, bicycle lanes or infrastructure, bus stop access. We'll also be compiling sort of the survey results. We'll start kind of like, distilling some of that information into like a spreadsheet format. It'll be kind of similar to that spreadsheet that you saw with the list of the 2009 kind of priorities. And then we think we'll probably, present that back to the community and just say, this is what we heard. This is the list of sections that the town has gotten feedback from. Now, what would be sort of the town's priorities? Again, this is kind of the phase 1 part. We do hope to kind of ramp up to sort of the official steering committee and town staff to kind of review all of that, and then kind of draft up a master plan document in the following year to kind of complete that. But anything else to add, Matt? So yeah, we're in sort of the data collection, information collection mode. If there's anything that you forgot to or didn't think about, please feel to reach out to Matt or myself, and we can kind of add that in. And thank you so much for spending your evening with us tonight and talking about how to improve Hartford and our health. Yeah, Sarah. Sorry.
Go out a paper version. How do they submit this?
Sure. So Sarah asked about there are some paper copies of the survey. If you would like to fill it out, how would we get that back? If you would like to drop it off in Matt's office, he can get that to us, and we can kind of add that to the survey results. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tonight's discussion. Great.